Local people, important issues. CBS 10 WILM's weekly focus on the Lower Cape Fear region. This is Byline Wilmington with your host, Don Ansell.
Welcome and a very good morning to you. Well, the proposed Skyway project is a 9.5-mile toll road and super bridge that would connect Brunswick and New Hanover counties. That would be a third access. Construction costs are now estimated to be well over $1 billion, and it's raising a lot of questions. Where will it be built? Is it really needed? How is it going to be paid for? Our guests this morning both have interests in the project. David Redwine serves on the State Turnpike Authority. He's a former state representative. He's now running for the state senate for the Brunswick County seat. And Dr. Walter Futch is the mayor of Leland and one of the key locations that are being discussed for the project. So those are our two guests this morning. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you. David, thank you for joining us this morning. Let's start off with where the whole idea got started. Do you know? I know you remember the Turnpike Authority now. I don't think you were there when it first was proposed, were you? Well,
in 2002, the General Assembly established the Turnpike Authority, and as luck would have it, I was one of the members of the General Assembly at the time and voted to establish the authority. Okay. It came about, basically, I remember sitting on the floor of the House and the gentleman who proposed the bill saying that we needed another tool in the toolbox in terms of transportation issues and another way to build highways because the state had so many needs and
okay, that's the Turnpike Authority, but where did the idea for the Skyway project come from?
Well, I'm not sure where it initially came from, but it was on the list of 5 initial projects that the Turnpike Authority was charged with looking at. In terms of where it generated from, I'm not sure myself. I'm a relatively new member to the authority, but I expect it was a leadership in New Hanover and Brunswick County who looked at the need, I suppose, to improve the bridge, and with the transportation issues we have, some way of correcting that.
So that was on the radar since the Turnpike Authority has been established?
In 2002. Yes.
In 2002. One of the big questions that I mentioned as we were opening is why is it needed, or is it needed? What's your take on that?
Could I go back to the question he had? I have a little bit of history. I've lived here all my life. About 30 years ago, they actually proposed a bridge across the Cape Fear that would cross Shipyard Boulevard over to Eagle Island and make what they call the loop, which would go 421 and that way. And that was going to be the other access. And that project eventually, I think, morphed into this project. The Skyway project, actually, when it came on the TIP, which is the Transportation Improvement Program, was scheduled for 2030. Okay, and now, since it's a Turnpike Authority, it is the #2 project in the region. It was not even scheduled to be built or started until 2030. So I see the Turnpike Authority somewhat as a way to leapfrog projects over other projects that have waited a long time.
Do you think
for funding?
Do you think it's a? Are you in favor of the project? I guess is the question.
Well, there's a lot of questions. You know, I evaluate it this way: is it necessary? You know, what are the studies that show that there's traffic to support this sort of structure in this location?
Do you think it's an important project for the region?
Well, to be quite honest, the impetus for the Skyway project on the Turnpike Authority was really pushed by an ex-board member, Lanny Wilson, who's recently resigned. And so he and I think a lot of folks in New Hanover County took a lot of interest in pushing that forward. But I agree with Walter. I mean, being on the Turnpike Authority a short period of time, some of the same questions he's asking or talking about now are some of the questions we ask. And I'm not sure myself at this point whether it is a feasible project. The costs are astronomical. Where it's going has generated a lot of interest and concern. Of course, that hasn't been decided yet. Is there enough revenue to pay for it? Can we borrow the money in this economic times? enough to do that? Will the state do some things in terms of gap funding to make up the difference between what tolls would bring in to support the payback of the bonds? Can we borrow the bonds? And the I-140 bypass that's coming through Brunswick County, that's part of that's now through New Hanover to 421, and the bridge across that, and then going past Leland and down to Highway 17, which is on the TIP, and one project, one section of that is proposed to be built.
TIP is just for
Transportation Improvement, State Transportation Improvement Plan. But our feasibility show that also has to be told in order to make the Skyway project feasible. So there are lots and lots of unanswered questions on this project.
One of the major issues has been that if this is going to be done, we need to save the path because of how rapidly our area is being developed, and there won't be any place to put it.
Right.
So, and Leland's one of the keys to that. Is that
possibly?
Because, yeah. Well, isn't it basically somewhere in Leland is going to be where the footprint of the
you know,
path?
if you look at their paths, there's like the spaghetti across the map. So it could be in Leland, it could be out of Leland. You know, I don't think they've really determined exactly where it could be until they finish the feasibility study. And even then, there are questions about, in my mind at least, as to whether they looked at all the alternatives that were possible.
I went to a public hearing
right.
That actually you organized at right. Over at the Wilmington City Council, because they were the largest venue, and it was packed.
We could borrow quick.
And it seemed that they have a path that's pretty well laid out. Their preference of paths.
Right.
Is that still, that's not final?
Oh no, and there's a huge study area, and it looks like spaghetti on a map, but the environmental impact statement studies that we have to do require that there be all number of alternatives, especially how that impacts the environment, what does it do to subdivisions such as Snee Farm, Magnolia Greens, Brunswick Forest, the town of Leland. All of that has to be taken into consideration. So there are a number of different alternatives out there. There's probably one that some people have said that they like better than others, but in terms of whether or not one has been picked, no, nothing has been picked, nothing's been done, and will not be done for some time yet, or recommended at least.
Will there be any land left in the preferred footprint of where, I mean, if everything is developing pretty quickly in Leland particularly, it's one of the fastest growing communities in the state.
I think within the town of Leland, there probably won't be a path through the town of Leland, but my thought is if you're going to build a loop, you would build it around something, not through something. And so it seems to me there's a lot of land in Brunswick County that's much south of Leland that, in my opinion, would be preferable to put this road. There's lots of high ground.
Closer to Southport you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, you know, I've had some engineers who are in the town of Leland look at some of the possibilities, and they see some huge possibilities for taking this route much further south and coming back into 17. Okay,
we're going to come back and talk more with David Redwine from the North Carolina Turnpike Authority and Dr. Walter Futch from Leland, Mayor of Leland. And when we come back, we'll talk a little about who has the bigger stake in this being built, commerce and development, or the residents. Stay with us.